and this is my project-based learning assignment. What is project-based learning? Project-based learning is a form of instruction that involves projects. This approach is designed to provide students with the opportunity to obtain the necessary knowledge and skills needed throughout these projects and challenges. These projects and challenges are based off of real-world experiences. And then this is a little photo of project-based learning. So it presents a solution, driving question or challenge, your need to knowledge, inquiry and involvement, 21st century skills, students get their voice to choose, and feedback and revision is also allowed. Where to start? Many educators can find it hard to figure out where to start. Before preparing your project-based learning assignment, you need to consider two key takeaways. What is my curriculum? How can I involve my curriculum into these lessons? Many teachers find this very difficult to piece apart their curriculum because we are assigned certain information we need to present to our kids. So when creating our project, we need to consider, is this information important to include in our lesson plan, or do we not need to include it? Can I incorporate some information from my textbook? It is very important to incorporate certain information that we are provided for our students when creating these projects. Also consider, what is my state standard? How can I make these projects go with my state standards that I need to teach my students? The second key takeaway is, what is the big idea? The big idea is, what does your lesson focus on? What is your key takeaway that you want your students to take away from your lesson? Why? When creating your lesson, always consider your why. Why am I creating this lesson? What is this lesson addressing? Why is it relatable to the real world? Or how can I make this lesson relate to my students? How can I make this relatable and engageable to my students in general? Because it's very hard with certain project-based learning to grab your students' attention on projects they may not relate to. Things to consider when creating these projects. Consider incorporating real-world examples and stories to make it relatable to students. Also include images. You can also ask students questions. For example, raise your hand if you have ever experienced this, or how would this make you feel if this happened? By asking these questions, it provides students with the time to use their critical thinking to relate to these situations and get a deeper understanding of the lesson. Lessons can include, in your lesson, students should use the following skills. Analyze. Some example of analyzing in your lessons can be examining, explaining, classifying, comparing, differentiating, illustrating, and providing different knowledges. An example could be, have students examine the project and prioritize the parts of the project that they should do first. The second part is evaluating. Some parts of that can be selecting, justifying their reasoning, improving different matters of their project, defending or debating their argument, modeling their project, proposing different ideas, debating, convincing, and suggesting topics. An example is having students select a key point and convince their class why their topic is correct. Another thing to include in lessons is create. Adapt, combine, invest in design, and imagine. An example of that is, if you are doing a group discussion with your students might have to adapt to different conversations mentioned because they may not agree that way. This can help students imagine new viewpoints on these topics that they were learning in their projects. Essential. Research is very essential. Deep learning involving curriculum and highly important topics that will relate to your students. Make ideas visible. Allow students to express their ideas as a class. Collaborate. Allow students to work together when needed or throughout the whole project. Project management is a very important thing to make your project-based learning projects work. So provide your students with all the materials that they may need to be successful throughout their project. Another key takeaway for project-based learning is reflect. So as a class, you can reflect. You can ask them questions about their project, what they may have wanted to improve on. And lastly, support your students. Help them find textbooks, course material, and higher education material for the topics that their projects will be based on, so they can have more takeaway from the lesson and be overall successful. When you do assessments, project-based learning assessments are not the same as regular lessons. Regular lessons, many teachers may provide students with written tests. Project-based assessments are different than that. You may consider the following or see this when you're doing your assessment. Consider student engagement. Are your students engaged in this lesson? What did they take away from this lesson? Are they collaborating? Are they collaborating with others, showing skills of understanding and opening to new ideas? Are they using higher order of thinking? And by that I mean, are they using critical thinking skills as mentioned earlier? Are they pointing out, I learned this, or did you think about this, to other students? Having a meaningful project. And by meaningful project, this could be showing a lot of detail on each project, explaining why they found this, why they believe this. The next part you would like to focus on is student reflection. What did they take away from this skill? Did they improve in their reading and their writing? Did they improve in certain skills? Did they learn anything from your project? And lastly, transfer of knowledge. How can they use this knowledge in the real world? What tasks and assessments did you teach them to help them in the future? And that is all about my project-based learning.